Hi, everybody. I'm Lisa Osborne, the Director of Emerging Media from Black Public Media. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm talking to you live from Atlanta. I design programs that support Black creatives who work at the intersection of tech, film, and art. And I am Julipino, Julipno, on all platforms. 3 months ago, as Jesse mentioned, Denton Black Film Festival and I started a web series to interview Black creative technologists and executives. We called it the Technically Brilliant Show. While I see a fair amount of coverage on Black tech startups, I rarely see profiles of Black emerging tech filmmakers, artists, and executives in tech press, film press, or Black press. Black creatives who work with one foot in tech and one foot in film seem to fall into a kind of no man's land perhaps because their work is not easily commodified, does not involve a potential 6 to 10 times return, rarely involves celebrities, is not mainstream, or is simply too weird. I asked each guest on the talk show about their origin story, which classes their high school offered, which clubs they joined, which college major they chose. And their answers reveal that there was no one or primary path to a career in the film or tech industry. The figure skater was in the robotics club, the economics major spoke Arabic, the one who was obsessed with the law teaches photography. Which begs the question, who gets to be technically brilliant? Who gets the opportunity, the training, the funding, and the mentoring? And what's at stake if you can't get into this exclusive club? In the second half of my talk, I'm also going to share 1-minute clips from 6 projects being developed by guests of the show. Here are the project titles, just to give you a heads up. Raviola Tales, which is an animated Unity Engine Oculus Quest 2 project. Unresolved, which is an AR memorial to 152 victims of racially motivated hate crimes. Red Summers VR, which is a 360 docuseries about racially motivated domestic terrorism attacks between 1917 and 1921. Mapping Blackness, which is a digital archive of historically Black communities that will use geotag media, including AR, 360 VR, and traditional film. Manakapuru VR, which is a VR collage that examines the cost of Brazil's economic might. And Movement Portraits, an abstract docuseries composed of motion capture performances by dancers and other Black creatives. First, let's define our terms so we're on the same page. When I say emerging technology, I'm talking about fourth industrial revolution technologies, such as virtual reality, augmented reality, artificial intelligence, robotics, 3D printing, and Internet of Things devices. In 2018, when I created BPM Plus to increase Black participation in virtual reality and other forms of emerging tech storytelling, I had no idea that, 3.5 years later, we'd have more than 7 programs, including the extended reality mixers and pop-up VR theaters that we have hosted in New York City, Las Vegas, New Orleans, and Los Angeles, the Non-So-Christian Ugbode Fellowship, which is earmarked for a creative technologist under the age of 30, and the MIT and Black Public Media Fellowship that Jesse mentioned, which we created last year with MIT Open Documentary Lab and MIT Center for Arts, Science, and Technology. Our 2021 call goes live this week, by the way. These kind of programs are vital to a healthy innovation economy because artists and academics are often working on new technologies years, sometimes decades before they become mainstream. It is vitally important that Black creatives and coders have the means and the support to try new software and hardware and explore new concepts in computing during their experimental or R&D phase. Black talent needs access to a technology when it's still messy, when it's not stable, when the equipment is still big and clunky. Black talent needs access before a new technology starts to become an industry, before the gold rush begins, before product reviews start appearing on CNET and Wirecutter, before ads start popping up at your subway stop, or apps start popping up on your mobile device. Why is this timing so crucial? Because if Black talent does not get a foothold in a technology before the first wave of investment, and before it reaches a tipping point, the odds of us catching up or having any kind of significant creative or financial stake in that industry is pretty much zero. Every study in the last decade on diversity, equity, and inclusion in the tech industry confirms this. The numbers don't lie. Who gets access to new ideas and new technologies first has massive long-term and real-world implications. It affects who gets the chance to acquire early adopter expertise. It affects who gets to proclaim themselves a guru or be deemed a genius or an auteur by the press. It affects who gets hired at startups that will become the next Google, Twitter, Twitch, and Snap. There is a huge difference between being one of the first 50 people hired by a startup and being the 500th person, which means it also affects who gets to build generational wealth. Early access affects who gets to influence political policy and laws about the use of that technology. It affects who gets to create the official historical record using a new technology. It affects which stories become canon. Remember that today's news storytelling forms are tomorrow's archival footage. Omar Wasso, who is Black, started Black Planet 22 years ago. It was one of the first major social networking sites. Since then, we've had the Napster Sean's, MySpace Tom, Chad, Steve, and Javed, Evan, Jack, and Biz, Kevin and Mike, and Zuck. The list is notable for its whiteness and its maleness. This isn't just about who has the intellectual capacity or the smarts to become technically brilliant. It's about who gets the opportunity and the resources to do so. MySpace sold for 580 million, WhatsApp sold for 16 billion, Oculus sold for 2 billion, Twitter's current valuation is $53 billion. And Black Planet? It sold for $38 million in 2008. Think about it for a second. What would Twitter and TikTok be without Black people? Without Black creativity and ingenuity, without Black cultural criticism, without Black activism, without Black memes, and without Black style? When all of the companies I mentioned were still considered emerging technologies, Black users helped them go mainstream by driving engagement and traffic with our original content, our intellectual property, and our sense of community. Over and over, we've seen that Black creativity and Black culture translates into big bucks and giant valuations for tech companies, just not for actual Black people. 3 of the projects I'm going to share with you today were made by filmmakers who own their own production companies. Tamra Shagalu runs Edoato Pictures out of Amsterdam and Los Angeles. Bayate Ross Smith runs Bayate Keenan LLC out of New York. And Fabiano Mishu runs Bilge Studio in Rio de Janeiro. In order for a Black filmmaker, artist, coder, or entrepreneur to have early access, the training, the knowledge to start the next Instagram, the next Netflix, the next Halo, the next Fortnite, we will need 1,000 Tamras and 1,000 Bayates. When I think of equity and inclusion, I'm constantly asking myself, how can I give Black creative technologists a boost over a high wall? And I challenge you to ask yourself the same thing. How can you or your company connect Black creatives to equipment, expertise, or to professional networks that might be difficult or otherwise impossible for them to access on their own? It's not just that who is behind the camera matters, but who makes the camera, or for that matter, any technology matters just as much. So now I'm going to switch gears and share 6 projects with you that demonstrate what happens when Black makers have access to tech mediums when the technologies are still messy. 3 of their projects launched in June 2021, and 3 are still seeking funding. First up is Raviola Tales, which is a family-friendly animated VR experience. This narrative film is about a kite store owner who's basically telling you stories about characters in the neighborhood while he's teaching you to fly a virtual reality kite. The project received a Black Public Media grant to complete R&D and to create pitch materials, and it is now seeking funding to create an Oculus Quest 2 version. Let's watch the teaser trailer and the first minute of Leonardo Souza's pitch video. Please note that all of the pitch videos have English captions baked into the files.
Hi, I'm Leonardo Souza, a Brazilian filmmaker based in Rio and the director of Raviola Tales. Raviola Tales is a 3D animated virtual reality project where Paulo, who lives in a favela of Rio, will share his stories and teach you how to fly a kite through the VR controllers. I have always been fascinated by flying kites. It could be the feeling I was flying, or maybe because the sky full of kites is just like a server hosting a multiplayer game. It was my internet before I knew the internet. Kites are a symbol of childhood in Rio's favelas, and I wouldn't be lying if I told you that it represents Brazil just like soccer and samba.
Next up, we have Unresolved AR, which is an augmented reality memorial designed by Tamara Shagalu and her team at Raviolateos Pictures for the long-running PBS series Frontline. The installation focuses on 152 victims of racially motivated hate crimes that took place between 1938 and 1978. The augmented reality experience made its world premiere at Tribeca Film Festival last month. Let's watch the first minute of the overview video.
Hi, my name's Tamara Shagalu, and I'm a filmmaker and creative technologist. And I'm also the creative director of Raviolateos Pictures, which is a studio focusing on film and new and immersive media. We've been collaborating with Frontline on a really significant and socially relevant project called Unresolved. Unresolved is a multi-platform experience. It's composed of a podcast, a film, and I've been responsible for the interactive web experience and the traveling augmented reality installation. When designing this project, I was really inspired by looking at the role of the tree as a symbol in American history and the ability to design an experience that mixes art and technology with powerful investigative journalism to bring to life the stories of victims of racially motivated murders.
Next up, we have the 360 documentary series, which covers domestic terrorism attacks in 7 American cities, including Tulsa, Omaha, East St. Louis, and Chicago. Although Red Summer attacks took place all over the US, the director, Bayete Ross Smith, focuses the series on the period from 1917 to 1921. Bayete wanted to examine how Black veterans and their communities were treated when they returned home from fighting in World War I. This project received a Black Public Media grant to complete post-production and to create pitch materials. It debuted on the Guardian website last month, and I believe the links might be in the chat. Let's watch the first minute of the Red Summers VR pitch video.
My name is Bayete Ross Smith. I'm an interdisciplinary artist and education worker who works at the intersection of multimedia, photography, journalism, and installation. My latest project, Red Summers, Domestic Terrorism, 1917 to 1921, examines the history of racial domestic terrorism in the United States of America, dating back into the early 20th century. A little over 100 years ago, the United States experienced a profound period of racial and social unrest. The country, and perhaps even the world, still feels the ripple effects of this unrest to this very day. This project will consist of 5 360 VR immersive short films.
Project number 4 is Mapping Blackness, which will be a digital archive about historically Black communities that will use geotagged media assets, including things like traditional film, 360 VR, and potentially volumetric capture of spaces. The filmmaker, Carla Lindale Bishop, was our first MIT and Black Public Media Fellow, and Black Public Media is an executive producer on this project. Carla seeks funding to create tech and design specs for the Mapping Blackness web and mobile experiences. Let's watch the first minute of Carla's pitch video.
Okay. Um, well, when were you born and what? Why did you move here?
Well, I was born in Cortland, Alabama. I came here in 49, December 49.
Mapping Blackness is a digital archive that celebrates the heroes, communal spaces, and heart of historically Black communities. The project was created by Carla Lindell Bishop, who is a filmmaker and educator. Her goal is to bring communities together and promote social change. This project utilizes an intergenerational approach to storytelling. Mapping Blackness trains young people to interview elders in Black neighborhoods.
Next up, we have Manakapuru VR, which is a mixed reality experience by Fabiana Mishu. This artwork is part VR collage and part collective art making experience. The piece examines the true cost of Brazilians' economic might. Black Public Media is excited to support this experimental, nonlinear work. The project received a Black Public Media grant to do R&D and to create pitch materials. Fabiano seeks funding to start pre-production and an Oculus Quest 2 version of the piece. Let's watch the first minute of Fabiano's pitch video, and just a word of warning that there might be some sensitive images in the pitch video. Thank you.
Manakapuru VR is a daring experiment in the making of collective art. It invites users to destroy images from Brazil's history in an experience that is part physical art installation, part VR collage. The intention of this experience is to invite the public to uncover centuries of Brazilian history encapsulated in 7 images, 7 layers, each one hiding the next. Images that are never totally seen or totally uncovered and that overlap others, like the effect that the passing of time has in our lives and memories.
And our last project, Movement Portraits, is by artist Lajane McMillian. It debuted last month at the Brooklyn Public Library. Each motion capture profile functions as a standalone profile of a creative person, most often a dancer. But taken in aggregate, the portraits become an experimental documentary series about Black movement, Black identity, and Black and movement as intellectual property. Let's watch the first minute of Lajane's pitch video.
Hi, my name is Lajane McMillan, and I'm an artist creating work that integrates performance, extended reality, and physical computing to question our current forms of communication. I'm passionate about discovering, learning, manifesting, and stewarding spaces for liberated Black realities and the Black imagination. I believe in making by diving into navigating, critiquing, and breaking systems and technologies that uphold systemic injustices to decommodify our bodies, undo indoctrination, and make room for different ways of being. In the past few years, access to motion capture data, 3D character-based models, and software to make animation yourself has skyrocketed. From Make Human to Mixamo to Carnegie Mellon's motion capture database, the ability to make and finish polished projects has become easier for many. While these resources are extremely helpful to create a range of projects, they lack tools to create diverse characters and movements unexplored by systems that center assumptions of neutrality. For example, when looking for culturally specific movements in existing motion capture databases, you may find some, but are often met with dances and movements that don't reflect the search term.
So that's it. Thank you so much for listening. For more information about the BPM Plus initiative, visit blackpublicmedia.org/BPM Plus. I believe all the links to the full pitch videos, which range from 3 minutes to 5 minutes long, are in the chat. And please join me in the Spark Q&A room if you have time. Thank you so much.